Okay, welcome to our 2026 Bloomington Restorations Incorporated annual meeting celebrating our 50th anniversary. So we do want to recognize preservation partners who are here. If I don't name your name, feel free to stand up and shout your name at me anyway. We have Noah Sandweiss from the City of Bloomington Hand Department. Noah. People from the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission. Who here is from the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission? Okay, we got some members out here. Very good. And the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review. Any of my fellow Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review people? Very good. Get those reaccreditation points there. Anybody else working with us in historic preservation, feel free to wave now or forever hold your peace. Okay. We would like for the BRI Board of Directors to please stand to be recognized. Very good. Thank you. What we're going to do is we are going to move into the election of board members. So the nominees are James Capshew, Karen Duffy, Pete Kinney, and me, Devin Blankenship. I just need a motion to approve that slate and a second. So can I get a motion? Okay, so moved. Can we get a second? Okay, and seconded. So all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So if you do it fast, that's how it goes. Okay, and then we're going to move into the election of officers. So the nominees are for president, me, Devin Blankenship, for vice president, Pete Kinney, for treasurer, Elizabeth Cox-Ash, and for secretary, Jan Sorby. Can I get a motion? Okay. Can I get a second? Okay. And all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. What we're going to do next is we're going to transition into the BRI Historic Preservation Awards. So our executive director, Steve Wyatt, will come up here for that section. Let's welcome Steve.
So, again, we call these the bricks. And tonight, I'm going to start off with an outstanding preservation project. Okay, tonight I'm going to start out with the Outstanding Preservation Project Award. The Princess Theater. It was getting to be in not so good shape. There was reports of pieces falling from the parapet, and the city got involved, and luckily for the community, a new owner came forward at the same time and tackled the project. His name's Neil Panzer. He's not here tonight, he's out of town, but he really deserves praise, and we have a brick for him when he gets back for what he's done for this theater. It's probably the only terracotta facade in downtown, so it's very unusual for Bloomington. It's definitely worth preserving. We have a BRI preservation easement on it too, from the early '80s when it was renovated back then.
Can't hear you.
Okay. The next one we have is also Outstanding Preservation Project Award, and this one is going to Dave Harstad and Chris Mino for the restoration of the Harbiston farmhouse on Woodyard Road. Here's a picture from 2014 when the state did their historic survey. So you can tell it's a beautiful brick house, but it needs a lot of work. And it had been this way for quite a while. And there we go, it's cleaned up now, but still ready to start. And fortunately, the old windows you might have noticed in those pictures that the old windows weren't there, but they're stored inside the house. And here's the after. Would you come forward for the award, please? Dave and Chris?
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I won't speak long, but first, this process, I'm sorry, can you hear me all right? All right. So a lot of thank yous to people in this room. All we did was write checks and get in people's way. And so we apologize now for all the harm that we caused people. But bottom line is, Sam Solar was our architect. Unbelievable job helping us through all the design challenges. Chris Sturbaum and Golden Hands were amazing on all aspects of the process. Chris was great to work with, and Ben is not here, but we try to break things around the house every now and then just so Ben can come over and help us, because he's just an unbelievable person. Duncan, we've got an old, not shown here, is we've got a barn that's possibly even older, and Duncan gave us a lot of really great advice. As everyone knows in this room, Duncan is a real barn expert, and we're blessed to have him here in Bloomington. So not only were we able to preserve the old house, but thanks to Chris and Duncan and others, we preserved the barn. And then I apologize if I'm missing anyone else, but someone who's not here that I want to thank, Jose and Raul Chavez. I'm sorry to get worked up, but I don't want to be too political, but preservation and construction does not happen without immigrant labor. We had so many wonderful laborers on that project who were from Mexico, and it would not have happened without them. So please join me in thanking them as well.
Our next award is for the Rosemary Miller Preservation Activism Award. And this year is a pretty easy selection with what had been happening in the Cottage Grove neighborhood. This house here was purchased by a developer who planned to tear it down and build more of the things we've been seeing all over 10th Street and other places near the campus. But John and Amy Butler weren't having it. They live next door, and they stepped in and worked on it. I know we talked to the owner of the house about possibly moving it, but the better solution, what they came up with was to keep it where it is, where it belongs. They actually bought the house to save it and got it through historic designation for local protection too. And they've extended that work with creating a district for the entire neighborhood to save it from the encroaching development of these multifamily buildings that aren't in keeping with that historic district there. And that's coming, is recommended for approval by the Preservation Commission and coming towards the City Council next. So I'd like you two to come forward and give you a break. Thank you so much for all you've done.
Thank you very much for this award. We are honored to even be considered, let alone to win it. It's been a long road. We never thought that we could accomplish the things we accomplished. And really, there are a lot of heroes in this story. And I want to thank the members of the Historic Preservation Commission for taking, for believing in our project and for backing it. And that was heroic. I truly believe that. And I'd also like to thank James Ford for being with us every step of the way, and everyone else in the Cottage Grove neighborhood for believing in this project, and also for stepping up for preservation. So thank you all very much.
We have one more award tonight, and this one's closer to home. It's for volunteerism at the Hinklegarten Farmstead, our headquarters. I'd like to ask Leanne Luce, our Farmstead volunteer coordinator, to come forward to present this award. Leanne?
She's acting in her other capacity as photographer.
Sure.
Paul Ash, where are you? Would you come up, please?
Did you know this? Did Elizabeth keep this quiet?
Yeah.
Good job. Good job. Do you want to come up too? Okay. Well, Elizabeth helps me very much with the volunteer and the open days, but this is about Paul. So I want to read this. He gets the award. He is a wealth of help and knowledge. He is a silent, calming presence at the Farmstead Open Days. He is knowledgeable and shares information with visitors and volunteers about the farmstead, gardening, local history, and the long-standing preservation efforts of BRI. He and Elizabeth are a faithful team I can count on. He also entertains visitors and serves as the bouncer on open days. And I have also accused him of maintaining a liar's bench when it's nice outside. He's a book lover and very generous in passing them on to others, and I've been a lucky recipient. I truly appreciate you and the longstanding association with BRI and the Farmstead. So congratulations. Okay? And just a little, hint, could always use volunteers, so talk to me. Thank you. Talk to me or Paul or Elizabeth. Thanks, Paul. Here, this is for you to keep, so you've got proof.
Bunch of lies.
Okay, let's see. I'd like to give a brief update on some of our projects. Starting off with back to the farmstead. Let's see. This is the carriage house. Last year we showed how we had it tuned up carpentry-wise, had it stabilized and resupported with improved foundation and all the wood tuned up. And so now we've got it painted, so the project is finished. And this coming year, we're moving on to the dairy barn, which is the largest barn. And you can tell it needs some work. We're gonna rebuild doors and repair the carpentry and then paint it. So that's the project for this summer on the farmstead. We also continue to work to find solutions for houses that we've acquired that were endangered with destruction. We picked up another one this past year. And this one's on West 6th Street. So we're looking at, if we don't find someone to buy it and restore it, we're also going through the process of specifying work to look and see about the feasibility of having it as an affordable housing project. So we've got a couple paths there, and it could work, I think, for affordable housing. We don't know yet till we get estimates from contractors. And with that, I'll also mention, like I did last year, about we find that there's more demand than ever for BRI because of all the development happening with student apartments. It's a matter of the houses are going down pretty rapidly. And compared to the way they used to be. Things have been rezoned, and the path for demolition is smoother now for these kind of projects. So we continue to work with developers to try to find solutions. If it can't be designated historic, then possibly move the house if there's time, or at least salvage out architectural materials that could be used for other houses and other projects. So that continues to be something we're spending time doing. So if anybody is handy and wants to help out with pulling doors and hardware and other architectural items out of houses, we can use some more volunteers, so just let me know. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Devin for our presentation tonight for the anniversary.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, this is my drink of choice, a Monroe on the rocks. Just gonna put it over here. It's not secretly vodka or anything. Okay, well, thank you to everyone for being here this evening. I do have a quick question, and I'm not singling anyone out, because you won't be alone, I promise. Who has been in Bloomington longer than 50 years?
I've been here 50 years.
We'll count 50, yeah. Longer than 50 years. Okay, so anybody come to Bloomington in 1976? So that was the year BRI was founded. Okay, who has been here for 45 years? Okay, and then 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Anybody less than 5? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here this evening. I promise I won't take 50 years in the presentation, so. I do have to work tomorrow, so. So this is 50 years of BRI. I'll be nice to our CATS people too by coming back to the microphone here. So what we're going to look at this evening is the 1970s, progress versus preservation, our restoration loans program, our affordable housing program, options to buy, and the Hinkle Garden Farmstead itself. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions, comments, memories, anything you want to share. So this is very much what Bloomington looked like in the 1970s with car culture. This is East 3rd Street, if you recognize the McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken, the historic, no longer with us, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Many of the businesses from the core of downtown had moved out to the east side for the big expansion of the mall area and everything else there. When you think of stores like Blocks and Penny's, and some of those had moved from downtown, including things like Bloomington Hardware, had moved out to the east side. So that was very much still the trend in the 70s. And if you can name those cars, more power to you, but you can tell it's the 70s. One of the main things that happened was the destruction of the Morton Hunter Mansion, and this was at 11th and Walnut. And it was really kind of considered the start of the historic preservation movement in Bloomington and Monroe County. There was a huge outcry after it happened. Thankfully, those columns in the front were saved and have been repurposed on another house. But it was sort of the beginning of historic preservation. A lot of times previously, historic preservation had been about, did President George Washington live here? Okay. Did Abraham Lincoln sleep here? Only once? Okay. So a lot of that, until we got to that bicentennial point, we weren't focused on normal people. We were focused on presidents or other famous people. So here's the Morton Hunter Mansion, and it was demolished back in the 70s. Like I said, that's when people began organizing to save old buildings. And Bloomington Restorations was created in 1976 as a result of those movements going on. So some of you may remember, those of you who've been here longer than 10 years, probably remember High Point, you know, the strip mall that everybody needed to go to all the time for everything. That's where the mansion used to be, so. Those of you who've been here since before the mid-90s probably remember the Showers factory looking something like this. In order to save the Showers factory, it took a lot of a lot of effort from the community to get behind the notion of historic preservation as being worthwhile. This is one of those cases where you look at things like the embodied energy of what did it take to build the buildings that are there, what role do they have. Obviously, we're never going to have the world's largest furniture factory again, so what could we use a building like this for? And those of you who live in Bloomington today know exactly what we use it for. One of the early examples was the Cochran House. You can barely recognize it behind that storefront there on North Rogers Street. The newly formed BRI group learned the house would be demolished and then sounded an alarm in the newspaper. Bill and Gail Cook purchased it, and it was their first Cook preservation project. They used it as the office for their product liability and insurance company. And if you don't recognize it yet, that's what you will recognize it as. So that is the Cochran House. So our fledgling organization, after its first couple years, had had enough fundraising and drives to finally purchase its own property. So the first property that we purchased was a property down by Lake Monroe, or Monroe Lake if you're really technical, Mount Ebel Church. How many of you have seen Mount Ebel Church? Yeah, most people in here. So there's a nice group of preservationists there together in the pews. Another area that was starting to gain attention was the old library. Because you know, it's the early 1970s, you've just built the most beautiful brutalist structure in downtown Bloomington. And you don't need that dank old Carnegie library. 1910s, they didn't know it. Those big drafty windows and those squeaky hardwood floors and yeah, so there was a big effort to save the old library, and so BRI was involved in the advocacy of getting support for saving the old library. How many of you have been in this building within the last year? Yeah, a lot of people. So you know it today as the Monroe County History Center. It's one of our treasured Carnegie libraries. There's the old view from Washington Street before the addition went on. So I was told I must brandish these awards, otherwise Steve will come up here and do them for me. So one of the awards that BRI received was in 1979 from the once called Historic Landmarks Foundation of Indiana, now known as Indiana Landmarks. And we have Rosemary Miller and Gail Cook accepting the award on behalf of BRI. That wasn't in the notes.
It's Reed Williamson is on the right.
Oh, Reed Williamson, you said?
Yeah,
Okay,
from Indiana Landmarks.
very good. Oh, yeah.
I think that might be Sandy Servas.
Okay, Sandy Servas, thank you. And it's called the Servas Award, so. This is why we have to get together, is to share this knowledge. Oh, here's another, we should probably tear that one down. Yeah, it's another drafty house with lots of intricate woodwork and, you know, North Walnut, maybe luxury apartments. So this is the Morgan House. It was BRI's second project. I believe the Morgan House had one of the first in-ground pools in Bloomington. Very small in-ground pool out the back. So it was in pretty rough shape. As a person with a very far back memory, I can say I've never seen it look like this. I've only seen it the way that it looks today. According to Steve, the word on the street is you could stand in the basement and look up and see the sky. So it was not long for this world when BRI purchased it. That's another thing, when you hear people with the rhetoric of reasons to tear down houses, it's always the same, like 5 or 6 things. It's drafty, they're worried about the foundation, you know, haunted, whatever. So this is the Morgan House before, and this is the Morgan House as you know it today at 10th and Walnut. Yeah, sure.
So when did Guy Loftman move his offices in there, and did somebody did they buy the building or rent it? How did it all happen?
Yeah, what was do we know the sequence of when Guy Loftman moved in, or?
He was the first, he bought it from BRI.
So he bought it directly from BRI? Okay. Yeah. So. Oh, here's another drafty old structure. You know, those 1907 courthouses, you could build something modern instead of that. But there was a discussion in the early 80s to tear down the courthouse, I believe to build a parking garage downtown because we needed more parking. And so then there was a groundswell of support to save the courthouse. So the courthouse is our 1907 Beaux Arts. It's our third courthouse. We've been through some courthouses, people. We don't really need to crank through many more courthouses. I think, you know, having this one is very good. Now I know it can't hold all of our stuff, but it can do some things. So we were fortunate to have Rosemary Miller have an opportunity to go up on top of the courthouse. So we have some pictures from that experience. Notice the dinginess of the dome there, not brightly illuminated as you've seen it before. Even here at BRI, we've heard accounts from people like Gail Cook saying that the murals were totally covered up and you couldn't recognize them, and they had filled in the rotunda with a courtroom. And so it really wasn't showing the best side of itself. Got the dome there. You've got one of the scrolled features in copper. You can see the Graham Hotel in the background there on that middle picture. And then the courthouse fish, which is said to be 6 feet long. Believe that if you want. I think it's true. Rosemary took these pictures as she scaled the ladder. That's not a fish pun, I promise. And this was her view from atop the courthouse. The dome was since replaced. It was around 2007, 2008, with that renovation project that we resurfaced the dome, and there's probably a few pieces of the copper hanging out in some closets around town. And you'll notice the Grand Plaza was a later Cook project as well. Okay, I'm going to welcome up Duncan Campbell to talk about the Paris Dunning House. So please welcome Duncan up here.
Yeah, so this is about 1983, and Rosemary and her continued efforts to save just about everything that was barely standing managed to get this away from the Craig family really just in time. And I was a carpenter in those days partnering with Michael Yoakum, and we were called to this site by Dee McIntyre, who at the time worked for what was it's HAN now. What was the old name for it? Redevelopment Office. And Dee was a folklore PhD student, friend of Henry Glassey's and Warren Roberts and the stalwarts at the NIU at the folklore department. I don't know how well it's understood now how close a relationship the growing BRI had with the city of Bloomington, but the redevelopment department and BRI worked hand in hand on several projects, the Morgan House and so on. And of course, our affordable housing program much later has done the same in terms of getting HUD grant funds to help us. But that really started with Dee McIntyre, and Dee was a very concerned preservationist and the first person I met who sat me down and said, let me tell you about the Secretary of Interior standards. And he had seen some of the work that we had done, and he liked the work we'd done, and he came to me and he said that they had acquired this building and that he was gonna be the manager of the project for BRI/city. And in those days, he didn't really differentiate that much between his paid job and his volunteer job. He sort of used his influence in both directions, which I'm not sure how easy that would be to do anymore today. But I mean, there was not really a conflict of interest. There was an affinity of purpose. So Michael and I go over to this house, and we were remodelers, you know, but we hadn't ever really done any historic preservation work, and I certainly wouldn't at that time have called myself a preservationist. And we took a look at this, and we were like, oh my gosh, you know, but Rosemary came with us, and I didn't really know her at that time, but I've never met that kind of enthusiasm about, well, any and I said, so, you know, what's going to make the difference about doing this? You know, like, she said, oh, we're doing it. We're doing it. And I was like, okay. So we sat down. It took us a week or so, and we put a bid together. And they didn't want to do time and material or anything. They wanted price. So we were frightened, and I wasn't ever sure if we could bid the job too high or not. But the way that you met with Rosemary in those days was you went to lunch somewhere. And I've been in BRI for a long, long time, not quite 50 years, but pretty close. And I've been to lots of lunches with Rosemary and other parties, and I'm sure many of you have also. But they were somewhat formal affairs, and so she had put together a committee to watch over this project, and we all went to lunch, and she said, so how much do you think it's, you know, what can you do this for? And it was just for the shell, just the outside, okay? But you can see both the back porch, this is the back, both the back porches are gone. On the left side, there's a build out that was some kind of bathroom. The brick has been plastered over, a lot of it, or painted. And there you can see the side, and this one wing on this side was in such bad shape, we had to tear the thing completely to the ground. I mean, dismantle all the bricks, stack them and clean them, and then hire some masons to put it back together. By the way, that's our crew at the ripe age of 33 or 4. Rosemary was on hand all the time to take pictures, so.
Is that you on the left?
Sorry? Which one's me?
On the left.
Yeah, on the left. You can't tell that? And then Michael Yoakum on the right, and that's Drew Antilla, as we're working as our assistant. He was only 17, yeah. So, anyway, so this is the other side of it, and you know, the roof was terrible, everything was terrible, but it was pretty much all original. And so the way that work got done was we had these weekly committee meetings. Oh, let me finish my story about the money. So I said, well, it's going to be $88,000 to do the shell. Remember, this is 1983, so that was, I don't know if that was a good price or not. I had no idea. And she just sat there and shook her head and said, well, it can't be that much. and I was, you know, I'm proud of myself. I said, well, that's what it's going to cost. Because I didn't know if she was trying to just, you know, get me to lower the price or whether she just, you know, I didn't know. And I said, well, that's what it's going to cost. So you're not going to be able to do it, or at least we're not going to do it. And she said, well, we have $77,000. And there was kind of silence, and the whole committee was there. And I said, and Michael and I were there, and I said, well, you're $10,000 short. And I mean, it is funny, but at the time it wasn't. Because we really wanted to work. I mean, this is 2 years of work, but I was pretty sure that she was waiting for us to say, oh, 77, okay, we'll do it for that. But I didn't. I said, no, you can't do it for that. And she said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And I didn't know what that meant. I said, well, you're not going to do it with us because that's not enough money. And she said, well, will you do it until we run out of money? And I said, yeah. And she said, okay, we'll get the money. And I mean, at the time I thought, well, at least we'll get 77 and they won't be done. And they'll have to, I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm not, So I'll just shorten this a little. We worked for a year and a half and we got to 77,000. And we're having this weekly meeting. And each of us, I'll talk about that in a minute, but each of us made a report. And when it came around to us, we were the lead on the job. I said, when you pay us the next payroll, that will be the end of this, that will be the $77,000. So we're done. And if you get more money or you have more money, we'll come back. This was like a Wednesday afternoon. We always had them on Wednesday at lunch. And Rosemary, she didn't even blink. She said, okay, you don't have to worry. You show up on Monday. We'll get the money. This is the second time she said this to us. And I said, okay. And we showed up on Monday. And I said, so how'd you do? And she said, well, we walked the whole neighborhood over the weekend with our committee and we raised $15,000. I mean, cash. And we said, okay, we went back to work and it cost $88,000. I mean, to the dime, So, and she was, obviously I was flabbergasted that she could do that they could do that.
Would you do the extra 5 half?
I don't know, I didn't get it. She didn't give tips. But my point about all this really is that that's the way BRI has always functioned. And Rosemary was always like, we're going to do this and we'll get the money. And people say, Rosemary, we don't have any money. And she'll say, don't worry about the money. And if you want to do preservation, don't worry about the money. I mean, I've been doing it now a long time and she's still right. And I've done a lot of projects that didn't have the money until the project really got rolling, and then inevitably it did. So anyway, we had these wonderful meetings, and we had this committee. This is Rick Loffman in the foreground. That's Guy Loffman's father, he's no longer with us, but he was on the committee. And Jean, the woman in the yellow skirt, whose name I can't remember, was a long time. Who was that, Steve? Sorry? Yeah, Jean Anderson, who was local. The woman next to her was not on the committee, but she did show up a lot, and I don't remember her name. Richard Jenkins is the one with the notebook in the plaid shirt, who's still a painter. He had the paint contract, and he's still painting in Bloomington. Larry Dahl is sitting down behind him. He was the mason. He did all the foundation work, including on the back of the house, dismantling almost the entire porch foundation and rebuilding it by hand. And he also was responsible for repairing it everywhere else. All the porch foundations had to be completely rebuilt. And he worked by himself most of the time. And Rick, I won't remember his last name, in the blue jeans, was the electrical contractor. And Dean McIntyre in the green jacket, whose face you can't see, was the lead. And he worked with the DHPA to make sure secretary standards were being followed. And he would come to all the meetings. And if we ever had questions, he would just say, explain to us what the preservation protocols were. And we never doubted it, because that's just the way you had to do the work. That was the scope. And if we didn't really know how to do it, we'd look at the secretary standards and argue over the details. But the reality was for the two of us, for Michael and for me, we started in the middle of the winter. There was no heat in the house. We took all the windows out. We stripped them all by hand. We took all the glass out and cleaned it and put it all back in by hand. It was about 10 degrees in that house most of that winter. It was really cold. And we didn't have any heat, and we didn't have a budget for heat. As you know, we're already $15,000 short. So we decided to start a fire in one of the fireplaces because we thought, well, we got these fireplaces, you know. So we were pretty smart. We took some paper and we put it in there and lit it. And about half the smoke came right back out into the room, and the rest of it was drifting across the second floor. It never did get out the chimney, so that didn't work. So we got a propane heater, and we would run it for 5 minutes, and then the room would fill with carbon monoxide. Fortunately, we had the windows out a lot of the time. Anyway, we were supposed to do all the windows and doors, and then all the rest of it was exterior, which was essentially the carpentry was rebuilding all the trim, rebuilding all the porches, doing all the woodwork, and then we trained a group of IU folklore students, predominantly folklore students, to do the tuck pointing. And we had these, college students who had never done it. And Larry Dahl and I and Michael basically taught them how to do it, how to mix the mortar and stuff like that. And they did all the tuck pointing. I mean, 100% of the house. And as you can see in this picture, the porches are significantly built. And then, of course, we have the famous picture of Rosemary, who had sold it to the law firm, which ended up buying it and putting it on the National Register. And we bid to do the interior of it, but we didn't get the job. The law firm hired somebody who probably only did it for $77,000. I don't really know what happened to it. But for me, I mean, it's an important job for the city, for the town, because I don't think that Prospect Hill would have been preserved and turned into a historic district if that house hadn't been done. It is absolutely the anchor of that neighborhood. And if there's ever an example of where one project can affect hundreds of projects and hundreds of citizens, that's it. When I first started, I was in Rogers Building Supplies. How many people remember when we had lumberyards? And I was at the contractor's desk, and somebody I knew, another contractor, came up and he said, "I saw your cars over in front of that old house on 3rd Street. And I said, "Yeah, we're gonna restore that house." And he stepped back and he said some words I won't repeat. And then he said, "That should be a gas station." And I mean, he was, he thought we were crazy, and I wasn't sure that we weren't. But anyway, it's really been an important thing for BRI. Put BRI on the map, as did some of the other projects that you've mentioned. And I think that's all for me. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Oh, yeah, so there's a good before and after. The before is of the back. The good thing with symmetrical houses is you get the impression, either side. Okay, and that's Rosemary receiving the deed for the house. Okay, next we're gonna have another speaker, Chris Sturbaum, come up to talk about restoration loans and his family's work with restoration loans. Everybody welcome Chris up here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm going to talk about a little bit of politics. 1966, Penn Station, demolished. The whole country was shocked, and the National Preservation Act was passed in 1966. And at that time, there were 12,000 properties that the federal Parks Department had said were important properties to save. By 1966, half of them were gone. So I think what some people don't understand is the climate of the time when BRI came into being. And I won't say it was war, but it felt like war, and things were just being torn down. You know, that courthouse, my dad, I grew up 2 blocks from here, and I was 10 when we moved here. So I've watched the whole preservation movement of Bloomington happen because my father was involved in it, and I was at the same dinner table. So I heard what was going on, how it was happening. So until the Preservation Act happened, there was no law, there was no rule, there was nothing to protect older property. And the revolutionary thing about that act was that now law says what a community feels about a historic property matters just as much as the profit that that guy's gonna make by tearing it down. And that was real. And Rosemary knew that was real. And she knew Reed Williamson, who also in 1966 formed Indiana Landmarks. And when she needed money to go get money, she drove up and saw Reed. And they were loaning the city, they were loaning BRI money at that time to create something like a revolving fund. So she knew the rules. And I remember interestingly, preservation of neighborhoods was happening at the same time that preservation of property was happening. And it's like BRI was the older sister for the Historic Commission as well, which came in maybe 13 years after BRI was founded. And this law came to life in Bloomington. Duncan helped write the local ordinance. But it was 13 years from 66 till BRI came along, 10 years really. But until the Historic Commission came along, that we had real rules here. Before that, you could put it on the National Register, which Duncan got very good at doing. And then once BRI touched it, they put covenants on the deed. And those were real too, and that protected property. So I remember our neighborhood association meeting with Rosemary, and she said, what you need to do is get this on the National Register because the city is planning a road that goes right through Prospect Hill neighborhood that'll take out 40 houses. And once you put it on the National Register, the National Preservation Act says the city has to review that as it applies to a historic property. So it was a classic chess move to block. And Rosemary knew exactly what to do. She told us what to do. We were just like, we don't know what to do, but what? Rosemary knew exactly what to do. So there are a bunch of times when I was in the room with Rosemary deciding things. I'm a little off script, but let me see if I have a couple other stories. Oh yeah, well, this is more recent. When BRI needed money for the deal to buy their property, let's see. Oh, by those headquarters, she just went and got the money. And when we had to do the downtown, there are just a list of properties where Rosemary found the money. So BRI really came in at the right time and put out the fire. And the story of the courthouse is, my dad just happened to be on the council at that time, the county council, filling in an interim position. 1 vote is what saved the courthouse. I think it was a 4-3. And they were serious that was going down, and they had stupid plans, but that's the kind of war. Everything was on the table, everything could be demolished. So, meanwhile, back at what I'm supposed to talk about. But you really had to know what the time was when BRI came in and played that important role. Let's see if I know how to do this. Okay, this house back here, when we moved into the neighborhood, there was a cutout of the hillside. There was a trailer, old rusty trailer sitting in the hillside. It was a single room occupancy. Someone died of an overdose in that basement. And that's the neighborhood that my dad bought into. You know, he wanted a house. He was a teacher with 5 kids. They wouldn't show him anything on the west side. The west side was horrible. You know, the west side was where you did not want to go. They wanted to take him around and show him all the suburbs. But he grew up in a house that his dad had fixed, and he recognized the value of a house on the west side that had enough rooms for all the kids. So what BRI's project turned into was a revolving fund, because once Dad bought a house, then the old lady next door to him told him, buy this house, and she loaned him money. And then after that, the banks wouldn't loan money to get these other houses. So BRI would loan the money, put their covenants on the house would get restored. And then here's what tricky thing my dad did. He sold it to people that wanted to live in the houses. You know, he didn't own them as rentals, he didn't maintain them. And by the time he passed, we celebrated his passing in my mom's house, which we had worked on and next door had worked on. And the people that came to see him were the people that got the houses. You know, it was really touching, but that's how we built a neighborhood around ourselves, by getting these houses, and BRI financed almost all of them. And Dee McIntyre helped me learn how to do houses too. He was a master, he knew how to do it.
Hey Chris, how many houses do you think your dad did?
Oh, I don't know if it was a dozen, but at one point we made a little key thing for him that had a Monopoly board on it, little hooks and rings. But, you know, what he didn't do was keep them. Pass them on, get the money back. Revolving fund works. That's how it revolved. So Rosemary helped us save it. And then, you know, we held on that way until the Historic Preservation Commission was formed, like 13 years after BRI started working. And then there was the work to designate the neighborhood. But everybody was kind of working together. The mayors at those times were working with the neighborhoods. BRI was working with the neighborhoods. And there was a real conscious way of bringing life back to these old houses. So I'll show you a couple things if this will advance. Dude. Okay, that's how it looked when we were starting to fix it. But there used to be a little bathroom outside of that pink orange area, because there were no zoning rules either. So we've remodeled a bunch of things that have crazy bathrooms in the basement, crazy bathrooms on the side. Anyway,
Where is that?
that's 3rd and Rogers. Let's see. Oh, I know what this one is. Oh no, this isn't. This is right across the street from Fairview School on 7th Street. And on the left is what it looked like when we found it. And what's behind that restored sign was an Airstream trailer that was built into the house. And someone probably would have restored that if they could have found it, but it was crazy. And what was really weird and nice, all the Victorian details were in the basement. You know, someone knew better when they took them down than to throw them out. And they all were there, and we put them back. Let's see, I guess before and after is the classic, so here we go. Let's see.
Chris, Rosemary told Cindy and me, don't worry about the money. No bank would loan.
Yeah, that's why the revolving fund mattered so much. I don't know if it's called redlining, but they didn't want to loan any money on the west side because these houses were decaying. People were buying them as rentals and not maintaining them. So we saw it as a neighborhood. We want ownership. We want people that buy into the neighborhood. It matters to our neighborhood. And that was the little mini war that was going on in the neighborhoods. Let's save our neighborhoods, get people in them. And BRI's money made that happen because the banks could care less. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, so there's that beautiful little porch. You can't see all the details, but it was a great house hiding inside of 50 years of weird treatment. Okay, Harrodsburg, we had a lot of good dreams about this house. But something happened. And we had a roofing company that used release people from jail. And one of them didn't think about smoking on top of a 150-year-old lath with no plaster, dropped a cigarette in there. And by the time we found it, we realized why Harrodsburg had lost so many houses over the years. Because the fire department can't get there. We turned on the hose, it went psh. The hose was from next door that shot about 10 feet ahead and went psh. And in about 15 minutes, I said, get the tools out of the house. And it burned to the ground. It was insured, which is good. Oh yeah, this is on, what is this, is this West 7th too? Right. It was a lodge. More people know the details about that than I do. BRI money went through that. Oh, I think I'm out of my time. Maple Grove Road. They said they'd get a hook if they needed it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
We didn't have to get a black cane or anything. Chris and Duncan and I could probably do a revolving show, you know, for quite a while. So one thing that we're really proud of is that BRI nominated the Maple Grove Rural Historic District to the National Register. So what you see in the protection of Maple Grove Road comes from a BRI effort. It was the first listed rural historic district in Indiana. And I will just say from the rural perspective, as someone who works on the County Historic Preservation Board, oftentimes our districts in the county are single properties. So having something like the Maple Grove Road Rural Historic District on the National Register is one of our biggest recognized districts in the county, because otherwise it's house by house, generally speaking. We do have our wall expert in the room, Susan Snyder-Selman, who's done a lot of effort on not only documenting the walls, but getting deep into the history of walls. So check out her presentation from the History Club and anything upcoming about walls from Susan. Affordable housing. So affordable housing continues to be a major topic here in Bloomington and Monroe County. And thankfully, BRI has been part of the affordable housing conversation for several years, and a lot of it has involved restoring the old houses like we talked about on Prospect Hill, but also looking at some infill as well. So the first affordable housing project was completed in 1998. That was just like, what, 5 years ago, right? 1998, almost 30 years ago. There are 29 houses that were restored or built. So yes, BRI will build new houses. So you see some new houses there in Steinsville. We also had a new house built on 15th Street. And that's one of those interesting areas when you talk about neighborhood density, where we've been able to take multiple lots. Like in Steinsville, we were able to get 3 lots from purchasing one house. Or on 15th Street, we got 2 lots, and we moved one house. I believe we moved that one bungalow to the one lot, and then we built the other bungalow. So that's one of the ways that we've been able to increase that neighborhood density and having infill that matches the neighborhood. A lot of the grants come from the city or state, so anything you can do to support that kind of money coming in helps us with affordable housing. We need to rehab the houses up to code with new roof, new wiring, plumbing, kitchen, bath. So as Chris mentioned before, a lot of times we'll have weird bathrooms. I have a side porch bathroom myself, but especially in our rural communities that didn't have plumbing early on. And this is for low to moderate income households. So our affordability covenants are usually on there for about 10 years, that if they go to resell the house, it needs to be sold under the same affordability criteria as well. And this also is the same neighborhood revitalization focus. So we know if we can get affordable houses into existing neighborhoods, that's really what we want to be doing. So we still look at the core neighborhoods in town and see, are there areas where we could do, where we could move a house, where we could have sensible infill, or support efforts going on in those neighborhoods. And like was mentioned earlier, usually when one project happens, other projects start to happen. So, you know, the Paris Dunning House was a major project. But even if you restore a gabled L on 7th Street, then the neighbors think, you know what? They're painting the house. I bet I could take off this metal siding and paint my house too. So you'll kind of see a ripple effect from BRI projects. So I'm going to show you a few examples of affordable housing. You'll recognize a lot of these from around Bloomington.
Can you tell us where they are if we don't?
I can tell you where some of them are, and if I can't tell you, Steve can probably tell you. This one's, South Rogers. That's West Kirkwood. This one was for sale like 3 years ago. There is one on South Rogers that is painted green. Is that also one of ours on South Rogers? Yeah. That's Howe right there. South Lincoln. See, we could have made it a trivia game. That's West 6th, yep. That one's Ellisville, right? Yep, Oak and Walnut. Yeah, if you know where Oak and Walnut is in Bloomington, congratulations, because it's in Ellisville. A nice double pin house there. This one is on, is that West 7th? That's not affordable housing, it's in the wrong slide. Okay. It's a loan project. It's a loan project, yep. This was the doctor's office in Steinsville. And so that was an Ellisville one. You're thinking of the Ellisville, yeah. These rural doctors' offices, we just got them out the wazoo. But yeah, so this is the doctors. Everybody's got a doctor's office in their backyard, you know. No, but this one is the doctor's office in Steinsville, and this was a BRI project, and so it made a great small house. And so that's one of those things that we've done pretty well is having a variety of different sized houses that we work on. This one is Steinsville. You can sometimes just tell by the scale of the hill, you know, you're like, that looks like it. And then here, here's the interior of that one. So you can see a lot of the finishes are taken back to the time period with transoms and wood trim there, and it's great to have those houses livable again. This is that example from Steinsville. I do want to point out in the picture we have our friend and realtor Deb Tomorrow and Don Gramboys. And Don was the head of the Affordable Housing Committee for many, many years and took on projects himself, which I will point out to you. And then there's the new houses that we built in Steinsville as well. This one is a gabled L where the chimney had collapsed into the kitchen. Again, a lot of times people say, well, you gotta tear that house down. But don't tell us that. We've also had to move a lot of houses to save them. So sometimes you'll see pictures like this. The bungalows are the easier ones to move, not like the University Courts 2-story brick houses. So a lot of times our efforts to save houses involve moving them and putting our covenants on them as well. Oh, here's the gabled L. Somehow the slide got out of order. That's the one where the chimney collapsed, right? Yes. Yeah, it got out of order. I didn't like drop my slide deck on the way in or anything. It's just PowerPoint. This one's an interesting project. If you just saw this house by itself, it looks like a very typical suburban Bloomington limestone house. This house was actually over on Eastgate, over by 10th and the Bypass. And the developer was able to work with us in moving the house to West 8th Street. And so this was part of our affordable housing program. I think we just had to take 4 feet off the house on the front. Yes. Yeah, to make it fit the lot. So we're flexible people.
The developer wanted to build
Right,
And,
so,
the family said, we don't want the house torn down.
okay,
So the developer came to us after we made a deal with them, he could have moved.
yeah.
And the developer paid for the.
Yeah, the developer paid for the move, which we like when they're willing to do that. So yeah, where you see the East Bay apartments that are like 3-story tall apartments just south of the railroad tracks, there were several ranch houses there, and so this is one of them. So it made a great affordable housing project that we were able to plug into the neighborhood on the west side. And again, like it used to have a basement in its old location, so we adjusted it to be a single-story house. Another thing we do is just the notion of buying time and getting those options and the options to purchase and purchase for resale. So this is where we buy and hold properties, and we just wait and wait for somebody, and we advertise, but we also wait for somebody who's the right person to work on the project and to meet our criteria. So we'll purchase a property, and then we will select a qualified buyer. And sometimes that can fall through a couple times before we get somebody that sticks. We provide the consulting for restoration. We're there to help, and then we apply our BRI covenants to that property. So, for example, we have the Steinsville Church. This was our Don Gramboys did this project on East 45. So it was a Tudor revival cottage, and the county had condemned it. But when you see that front door, you're like, well, they can't condemn it forever. And so Don, wonderful Don, put his blood, sweat, tears, heart, soul, probably more than $77,000 into this Tudor house, which is over on East 45 as you head out of town. Here's another one. Yes, we've got a fan favorite. Call in to request your favorite BRI house. Dial 0102 if you like the house on North Walnut Street that moved to South Henderson. So this one was by our very own Jan Sorby and John Lawrence to move this house. Oh, okay. Move this house to South Henderson, where there was an open lot. And so that was a big labor of love for them to move that. That's where the Hallmark Properties office is on North Walnut. This one is another neighborhood anchor, a lot like the Paris Dunning house is. You might recognize this from 7th and Rogers.
That's Fullerton House.
Yeah.
That's on Fullerton Pike.
Oh, Fullerton House. This is Fullerton. What happened then? Something got inverted. These got inverted somehow then. Yeah. We have this Victorian on Fountain Drive, formerly Vernal Pike. Not the house was formerly on Vernal Pike and moved. Fountain Drive was formerly Vernal Pike. We have to be really clear about these things. Sometimes with our house moving, we'll say, but what about the house on North Walnut? Oh, you mean the South Henderson house? No, I mean it's a real who's on first when you start moving houses around. And this was one of our great ones, the Beaumont house. This one we held on to for quite a while. We had some interested buyers. We had some disinterested non-buyers. This house just so happens to be built in a low enough area that the basement was an indoor pool most seasons of the year. So that was something we knew we had to have done was fill in that basement. It is surrounded by the Porter Reserve, so that's one where we worked with Sycamore Land Trust when they got the land for Porter Reserve, and so this is the house property. This is as far west on 48 as you can go while still being in Monroe County. You are almost to Whitehall, and across the way is where the Hoosier football team got their holy water. So this is neighboring a sacred site. And we held on to this one for quite a while, and then we had the Cardwells purchase it, and they did a lovely job. But you see in the before picture, like, look at the beautiful light streaming into that lovely room there. So just inspires you. But a lot of work went into that house, and it is currently a bed and breakfast. So if you have friends from out of town staying or you just want to have a little staycation, definitely check it out. This was another big win for us, the Hayes Market in Sanders. So we had an opportunity with the family selling it, and we already had an interested buyer before we had even closed on our end of the deal to have an interested buyer. And so they did a lovely job. Kay and Rudy Fields did a lovely job of restoring the Hayes Market in Sanders and even restoring the gas pumps. So we were very appreciative of that.
Devin, was that related to the Hayes Market in Bloomington?
I don't know if there's a family relation between Hayeses or if every Hayes feels compelled to go into the grocery industry. I don't know. Yeah. I believe this one was also a teacher at the school in Sanders, this Hayes. Yeah. Okay, and then another one that we held on to that neighbors occasionally complained about was the gabled L on Smith Avenue. Glenda and Patrick Murray were our fabulous buyers who converted this gabled L back into looking like a gabled L. It was a bit of a tricky one because it kind of initially felt like it was facing a weird direction, so getting it to feel right on that lot was important. And creating that housing on in a dense core neighborhood was important as well. You'll notice they did a little shamrock for their vent up there. The Murrays, there's shamrock. So the other one that I have to brandish is the award that we received in 2010, the Servas Award from Indiana Landmarks for Community Preservation Group Lifetime Achievement. You know, when you receive a Lifetime Achievement Award before you're 50, you know, that's pretty good. So we got it like 16 years early, so. And there's our lovely group there. You'll recognize some faces, I'm sure. And then our Hinkle Garden Farmstead. So if you're familiar with the Hinkle Garden Farmstead on East 10th Street, that is our headquarters and has been our headquarters for the past 20 years. One of the cool things about it is it still functions as a farm in our partnership with others. We also have the museum on site, which is open multiple times a year. Check out our museum open days. And then we also have a rental property there as well. That's the little house next to the bigger farmhouse. We recently finished the painting the exterior. Those are the colors from the 1920s. But there's been farming on the land to the east of the house, there at 10th and Pedellis. And also that's where we have our maple syrup production as well. So that's been our home for 20 years. It's a kind of nice in the city glimpse of a farm. And that is all I have for you this evening. Thank you very much for being here and for listening, but we'll also entertain questions or comments or memories that people want to share with us. So thank you very much. Yes, you over there, you have a question.
Yes, is it true that Rosemary asked the owner of the Paris Studying House to just give it to us?
I do not know.
Steve?
I believe so.
Okay.
Really?
The Rosemary asked the owner of the Paris Stunning House to just donate the house to us.
Yeah, I think that's right. Mary Craig owned that house, and she was living in it up until the time she passed away. In one room of it.
Wow.
And her husband, I don't think her husband and she lived together, but he was the one who transferred the deed to Rosemary. And as far as I know, it was for $1.
Wow.
There were a lot of cats in that house too.
And not like jazz musicians, like, yeah, feral cats, yeah. Yeah. A lot of cats used to hang out in that house. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, maybe she didn't even take the owner out to lunch at all, you know? It's just okay, yeah. Lunch was cheaper back then. Okay, other questions, yeah.
How many directors of BRI have there been?
So how many directors of BR have there been? Well, Steve is the only one I've known and heard of. Steve, did anybody predate you? There was nobody who predated you. It was all volunteers before. And I'm sure there's times where Steve feels like he's volunteering a lot too. So we appreciate all he does. Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy Easton had the idea that BRI needed someone to run the show. It was all volunteer, and without Rosemary,
Yeah.
who knows what would happen.
And one of the things from Duncan's section talking about the Paris Dunning House that I didn't get in the transition there is the Paris Dunning House was kind of the beginning of the end of BRI board members saying like, yeah, let's all roll up our sleeves and manage a construction project directly. And so that's when it transitioned into the revolving loan process and then also eventually to getting an executive director because if you can imagine a ragtag group of historic preservationists trying to all manage a construction project, you can see why Paris Dunning House might have been the end of that notion as an efficient notion.
They did do the Mount Eagle Church though.
Yeah.
And its members did all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they hired out the roof. That was about it.
Yes.
When you spoke about the saving of the courthouse, I, at one point, got involved with that. And one of the interesting things about it, at least at that time, was as far as I know, it was the first BRI project that really pulled in the entire community. There was a kind of a celebration downtown. There were bands playing, students, music came and played. We had games for kids, and one of the people involved, not a part of BRI directly, but definitely pushing it, was Charlotte Zillow. And I think really she should be recognized.
Right, right.
She was the big
Yeah.
thrust behind
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Charlotte Zitlow and Gail Cook are two people we've lost recently who were strong forces in historic preservation and community as well. Yes, Elizabeth.
I was a banker for 30 years, and when I first started with BRI, I ended up financing just about all of its affordable housing projects because the other banks would not finance those because they had historic covenants. So I was doing it until it was okay for those other banks to do it. By then, I'd lost my job, I'd been there for 30 years, so now other banks will finance them. But this took a long time to convince the banking community that those covenants were okay to finance.
Yes.
And actually it increased the value of the property to have those covenants on it. This was just extremely important.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for being an early believer and an early advocate and continuing in your many roles and supporting BRI and all the things that you do, because we definitely appreciate all that. Jan.
Yeah, a couple of things to follow up on that. First, is it true, since we're talking about the courthouse, I think I saw an article in the paper that the city council wanted to replace it with like a 3-story parking garage. Is that true?
I had always heard parking garage. I don't know if anybody else has any other version of the story that they've heard or anything they remember as well. Yes, Elizabeth, do you remember?
Maybe there was
Yes.
offices in the park below.
Offices and park below, yeah.
I saw a headline that said, "This monstrosity must go."
Yeah. No, it's always interesting to see the tear down rhetoric. And that's the other important thing too with looking at adaptive reuse. When you're looking at things like the Showers Brothers factory, when you're looking at things like the space where we are today, when you look at all these spaces around town that maybe have outlived their original function, that's when we look at adaptive reuse. And so even looking at something like the courthouse, obviously the courthouse cannot serve all of our functions that we need for Monroe County government. We've just grown big enough that not everything can be in that building. Some towns do the thing where they add on hideous additions to their courthouse. Or like Terre Haute, they tear down their whole town square and then put little other buildings around the courthouse that are related to the county government. But that's one of those things to always consider. When you see a building like that you're not sure about if it can be useful again, usually it can be useful, whether it's a Coca-Cola bottling plant or, like I said, a furniture factory or an industrial building of some kind. Yeah. Yep.
I'm mourning the loss of the houses on Jefferson Street, Charles 10th, and I'm just curious, how did that happen so fast? That's where John Paul Dario's house and studio were, if I'm correct, I'm not real sure. But, going across Jefferson now is really distressing because there are all these quadruplexes, I guess, that have shot up in, the last 4 months? I don't know.
Yeah. There's always a very delicate dance between the preservation and development and what agreements can happen and what scale of agreements can happen. Whether it is one of those things like saving one of the houses, moving a house, saving all the houses in place, things like that. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I'm sure you all know that the climate has changed and that people are even seeing preservation as an obstacle to density. And as, a way of having people having special privileges with their houses. We've all gone through the opposite, knowing these are saving houses for future use. They're small, they're affordable, but tell that to some of the people on the city council now.
Yeah, Wendy, I think what happened was the city rezoned that section of the neighborhood for that kind of development. So then when a developer tried to build it, there was nothing to stop them, except historic preservation in the Green Acres neighborhood. But that wasn't successful, the effort to designate that historic as a neighborhood.
Does the planning commission have as much, if not more power than the city council, or?
No, they work together.
Just a precursor?
The city council sets the plan. The city council sets the plan, the planning commission administers it. But anyway, we tried to find a way to get some of those houses saved by moving, and we had someone in the neighborhood that wanted to move one or more of them, and then he changed his mind. And at that point, it's too late.
Yeah, sometimes the time is not on our side to save certain things that we would like to save. The other thing I'd once heard, and I'm not sure this is probably less true now that there are more apartments downtown, but at one point in time, the residential density of downtown Bloomington was less than it had been since before World War II because of all the parking lots and specifically a lot of IU parking lots. So a lot of times when you travel around downtown, kind of take note of the parking lots that would have been 12 or 16 houses around town. So yes, yeah, Paul.
And sometimes adaptive reuse is not necessarily historic, and it's not always pretty. 714 South Rogers, the Bloomington Convalescent Center, is brutalist architecture. I wanted it torn down until the idea came, well, why don't we make that the police headquarters? And I'm sure that not everyone was happy about that in my neighborhood, but I am.
Yeah.
I think it's, a brilliant reuse of an old structure. Not everyone was happy with what happened with the McDowell Baptist Church. It's now Hoosier Heights Climbing Facility. But, 100 years from now, somebody can tear down that big ugly building, the steel building that was added for the rope room, and something else can be done. But I won't be around to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing to consider too is we all have our pet favorites with historic preservation. Word on the street is that Herman Wells didn't like Victorian houses too much or didn't really care about them that much. A lot of times you're not a huge fan of the houses that were the ones that maybe your parents or grandparents lived in as newer houses. So bearing in mind with the National Register standards of 50 years, that means anything built in 1976 or before. And then picture some of the houses built in 1976 and how you may or may not feel about them. And realize that house from 1970 is also, yeah, it's also antique. It's also showing a time period in U.S. history. So, okay, any final thoughts? Yes, Jan.
I do have a final thought, and I'm wondering how, if people right here who obviously care about historic preservation, what can they do, like if they see a building that's laying hollow, what can they do to help us?
Yeah. So if we often compare ourselves to an animal shelter for houses. This is the first time tonight we've made that analogy. But if you see a stray house and it's giving you that look, and you think it might have, fleas, probably has fleas, it's looking a little bit raggedy, that's one of those where you can always contact us at BRI. You can email Steve. We do keep our eyes out for endangered historic properties. And a lot of times then there's a connection to other people in our world. So for example, we purchased a house in Ellettsville, very much because it had cats in it. That's how somebody knew about it. They're like, I know about the cats in that house. And also, BRI should consider purchasing that house. So, so we do ask that you keep your eyes and ears open. A lot of times the issue for us is time and or money. So, so either securing enough money or having the time to address to something is the big thing. But we do like when you report those things to us because we don't live everywhere. We live in our own neighborhood. So there's times that, and I would say that a lot of times about the house on 48, is that not very many of us drove by the house on 48, so we didn't really know how the house on 48 was doing. But it's always good to get reports from our membership and from the general public about any structures of concern. Yeah.
Follow up with her comment about green acres. In a few weeks, there will be a vote of the city council to decide whether the conservation district for the Cottage Grove neighborhood will go forward. It would be really nice to have everyone in this room show up at that meeting.
So, very good. So some Cottage Grove advocacy there. So the other thing too, it's our 50th year. We love to hear from you. We love to hear your ideas. We are doing the pandemic bounce back that every organization is doing. So we love to have you involved. We like to hear from you, whether you're volunteering for open days, whether you have an idea for a project we could do, whether you see a need that we can help fulfill. We would definitely love to get that sort of insight from you as well. So with that, Steve, do you have any other announcements that you'd like to make before?
Just eat cake.
Okay, so yeah, so please eat cake, eat pizza, celebrate. Yes, we've got another announcement from Olivia.
And on your way out, if you would drop off your name tag in the box here, that way we can reuse them next year.
Yeah, and there's adaptive reuse. If you don't use your name tag, we'll use it for somebody else. See? So adaptive reuse. So please have some pizza, have some cake, mingle, continue to mingle. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for helping us with this 50th year of BRI. We appreciate you being here.